Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Coffee Time with Byron. I'm your host, Byron. Alongside me is former Major Leaguer Don August, for the second time. Thank you again. I appreciate it. This is why I wanted to have you on. We stayed in touch. This is what I like to see. I don't care how many times I have my old guest on. I love to do this. So, welcome back. I'm going to let you do the floor. I'll ask some questions here and there about what you want to promote. You're here to promote your book, which is fine by me. I'm okay with that. You got you. Well, did I send you the? Oh wait, no, I did not. I need to send you that link so you can go to send it to whoever you want to view. And but I'll let the floor be yours right now. Go ahead, speak on your book, why you wanted to do it, and all that. The floor is all yours. Why I send you that?
All right. Well, yeah, we spoke a few years back, and it was right after the COVID time. And during that time, I was still in the process of making my book. And my son suggested, why don't you, during COVID, go on Twitter and just kind of tell some stories. There was no sports at all going on that time, as everyone remembers. So when I put those stories out, just kind of told about my experiences of playing baseball in different countries, and just the weird things that happen to you, the things that, like, as an American, a former major league pitcher, an American in different countries playing baseball there, what it was like. So I kind of shared stories. People seemed to really like them. And that's what I did. And that's when me and you got in contact. We did the interview, and I kind of talked about that. In the meantime, since me and the guy that helped me write the book, who was actually a former major league pitcher, he was a teammate of mine when I was with the Milwaukee Brewers. His name's Mark Knutson. I gave him all the information that I had from I started the first part, and there was a second part. And I shared him both parts, and he came up with the idea, we'll write a story from these sources, and it's not going to be chronological, it's going to be topical. So the book is actually the different chapters are in topics. The first chapter, and the chapters are named after rock and roll songs. So the first chapter is called Break On Through, which is by my favorite group of all time, The Doors. And that was also my walk-up song. So whenever I came in Milwaukee County Stadium to come pitch, they would play Break On Through by The Doors. So that's the first chapter. And it basically kind of talks about where I came from, my background, where I went to high school. That part's pretty much brief, and it goes to college and then my Olympics. And then it talks about when I finally made it to the major leagues. And then the book kind of goes into talking about my time on Team USA in the 1984 Olympics. So that kind of rolls in there, and it tells a lot about that going through the major leagues. So that's chapter one, basically. So the next chapter is called Who Will Stop the Rain? And that's a chapter that kind of talks a lot about weather on the most part. One of the stories I share on that chapter is my very first game that I ever pitched in Taiwan. I was new to the team. It was like probably in the first 10% of the season, maybe. The season was kind of new, but I arrived there. I actually started that year, 1995, with the AAA Pittsburgh Pirates. Now that leaves another chapter called The Replacements. And I talk all about the 1994 Major League Baseball strike, and then the replacement players that lingered into the 1995 spring training. So I talk about how that personally affected me. So Who'll Stop the Rain now is I go to Taiwan for my first time, and the day that I'm supposed to pitch, it rained very, very, very hard. And when we arrived at the stadium, these ballparks had all dirt infields, grass outfield, and that dirt infield was completely underwater. I mean, when I say it poured, I mean it poured. And I thought, there's no way we're playing. And I think I said that out loud, just whoever would hear me. I go, well, I guess we're not playing today. And two of my other American teammates said, no, don't worry. We'll be playing this game. I go, yeah, right. That'll really surprise me. So sure enough, next thing I know, when the rain finally stopped, there's about at least 15 of these Taiwanese boys wearing sandals, blue gym shorts, white t-shirts. They had a bucket and a sponge in their hand. So they literally went onto the baseball field, dropped the sponge on the ground, and would squeeze it into the bucket next to them. And then there's other adults that were working on the field with rakes and pushing water, and they would like dig a groove into the infield dirt and push it to a drain, and they push the water into that groove, and the water was going into the drain that way. So I'm just watching these kids with sponges on. It was kind of tripping me out because I think there's no way. And they said, okay, yeah, we'll be playing this game within an hour. And sure enough, that hour was up. We were out there having the first pitch of the game, which totally surprised me. And yet the field was in good shape to play. So that's the kind of the story that is in chapter 1, and talks about typhoons that came through, which are hurricanes in the Pacific, and a major earthquake that I was in. So that's that chapter 2. So all these different topics are and chapters are based off of rock and roll songs. I don't know if you got any question you want to ask about that.
Yeah, just keep going real quick. I'm going to send you the link. I'm sending you the link now to share to whoever you want. So if you want to keep going, I will chime in with some questions if you want to keep going on. Give me one second.
So yeah, there was a long process. You know, when I first started to write the book, it was about 9 years ago. And, you know, after I got home, after playing 8 to 9 years internationally at the end of my career, you know, there's always the hope of getting back to the United States to play, of course. You know, I feel like a lot of guys say, as long as you have a uniform on, you always got an opportunity. So about nine years ago, I started writing the book. But before that, I would share stories with friends and family and people like that. You know, something would come up while we're just hanging out, and they go, wow, that's pretty crazy and weird, isn't it? I go, yeah, it was pretty weird and crazy. Then they start saying, well, you ought to write a book. I go, well, nah, I ain't going to write a book. That takes a lot of time. You know, that's not what I do. But then, like I say, 9 years ago, I started thinking about more and more. Well, maybe I could write a book about all this. So I contacted a couple of guys who are authors who had written baseball books and who had contacted me to interview me for their story. So I had their numbers, and I returned back to them saying, hey, you know, we talked about a year or two ago. I go, I actually want to write a book about this story. Would you be interested? The first guy said, nope, I can't. I'm still in the process of writing a book right now. I don't have the time. Okay, thanks a lot. Second guy, he said, yes, I'd love to. So that's where I kind of started the process with him. I would talk to him over the phone, tell him these stories. He would write it out, send it back to me, and I'd check them out and correct them and make, you know, fix the mistakes and all that kind of stuff. And we went back and forth. And I think we did that for about 2+ years. And we were trying to get a publisher, but the far as we got was like my background right up till I was done playing Major League Baseball. But I wanted the whole story, and all the stories really came about is everything that came after Major League Baseball about all these crazy and weird things that happened to me in these different countries. So after we did that first part, he wasn't able to do it. He couldn't work with me no more. So then that's when I got in contact with Mark Knudsen. So after I was done with that first guy, I wrote the rest of the stuff myself, you know, just hand and wrote it out and typed it. And then I sent that to Mark Knudsen. And then we worked together. Well, it took me at least, I think, another 2 years of me writing on my own to finish that last part. And then when me and Mark Knudsen got together, it took about another 2 years maybe to put this story together. And then we found a publisher about 2 years ago. So 3, 2, 2, and 2, I guess that come around equal about 9 years altogether. So, you know, I didn't think it would take so long. Once we got in contact and made the deal with the publisher, you know, they made us hurry up and submit the final product to them after they accepted our offer. And then they got back to us and said, well, we gotta delete 20,000 words. It's like, wow, 20,000 words. That's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. So it was, you know, a bunch of stories got taken out, and some of the stories that were able to stay in kind of got diluted down a little bit. They had to could be in too much detail. So took a lot of cutting down. So that process we got done, and then we were like waiting a while, but we were starting to ask, well, how much longer we got to wait? When is this actually going to come out? And they said, well, we got other projects that are ahead of you. But in the meantime, then we had to find a bunch of pictures and we'd send them in, and I had to make an index, and then they had we had to we took those words out, but I can't really kill a lot of those stories. So I said, can I have at least 1,500 more words, which really isn't a lot.
Right.
So after those 1,500 words, I kind of got it in, and I was like, okay, this is workable. We can take this. And we said we're good to go. And there's more of that wait. And then just boom, about a month and a half ago, maybe 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, they said, okay, you're next, man. We're going to get you going. And there's like the one more time to do the proofs, checking for mistakes. Everything's all go. And then they said, yeah, we're gonna put this out and release it. And came out on September the 27th.
And by the way, if you want to send it to, I did send you the email, so check your email. And I sent you the YouTube link if you want to send that to whoever real quick that you want to. And while you're doing that, you can listen to the questions I'm going to ask you, and we can go from there. If you want to send that real quick, I sent it over, so let me know. You can.
Yeah, I don't have anyone to really just send that to, so you just continue on.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if this all saves, I can save it later, and maybe people can go.
Yeah, it's on YouTube, literally on YouTube. Coffee Time with Byron. So
right.
I'll even send you when I'm done. That's fine. We can do that.
Yeah. All right.
So basically, I'll let you continue on with that. Also with the chapters, I'll let you have the floor. So my first question is to you about the book. What made you honestly want to write a book? And who honestly told you that you should?
Well, it just too many people kept on saying I should. I'd just be hanging out, like watching a baseball game with some of my neighbors and friends at my house. 2 or 3, 4 of us hanging, and we're talking about stuff and talking about baseball, and somehow something about playing in Taiwan or Italy or Mexico or whatever places I was at, and I just share a story. So they thought, man, that's pretty crazy. Like I said, they go, well, why don't you write a book about it? And I really wasn't just too serious about that. And then when I decided to do it, what kind of made me think that this could work is nobody's ever really written a book or talked about what it's like to play baseball in other countries.
Right.
If you're ever going to go to the bookstore or whatever, and you go to the sports part, you see how many baseball stories are. I mean, there's many, about the former great major league players.
But not a country, yeah. Right.
Yeah, they talk about everything. You talk about everything about Major League Baseball, they kind of covered. Maybe even minor league baseball, they kind of touch upon here and there. But there's nothing about what it was like to play baseball in these other countries. Right. Now, there's one movie a number of years ago now, kind of time flies by. Tom Selleck was the guy that was a Major League Baseball player, and somehow he got traded to a team in Japan. So the story's about him going to Japan and playing baseball, and this Major League guy that's over there, he's like, hey, what's kind of going on with my career here? And it just shows like the cultural differences and how the game's slightly different, but it's still baseball. There's still 4 bases and 90 foot and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted to just kind of tell people about what it was like to play in these different places. The hardest parts was the culture and the language, basically, and the food and getting around in these places where, like say in Taiwan, all the signs are written in Chinese and stuff like that. And it's just really crowded. And, so it's really hard. And I saw a lot of really good baseball players come and go from, the Americans. We're called the foreigners. So that'd be like the Dominican players and the Puerto Rican guys and guys from elsewhere. Right. So a lot of guys that I had played for in the minor leagues and major leagues, some guys have now trickled around the international circuit, so to say. And I knew that these were some really good players, and they struggled and they couldn't play. They couldn't handle the pressure of the culture shock. And another big thing that was really hard to deal with is being the American or the foreign player. They would pay us a lot more money than a lot of their native players.
Right.
So therefore, they expect you to be good, very good, all the time.
Right.
They don't mess around. No, one bad game and you're already hearing the word that,
right.
If you don't do good, you can be gone. And that's pretty stressful.
Right.
But I learned early on, though, when I made my first stint of the countries I went to was in Mexico. Went down to the Mexican League. And there's a couple other American players that were there when I showed up just before the season started. And we just came up with this phrase, you just have to laugh. So, when you're in another country, things are not done the same way as we expect or we're used to living here in the United States. We live like Americans. We have a lot of expectations of, what our daily life is like. But in other countries, things just don't run smooth. And they don't go about how we have it here. I mean, you talk to a lot of people, and you want to say that you're a proud American. We have the greatest country. We always say that, but you don't really appreciate that until you leave and go somewhere else and then experience it with your own eyes and live it. And then when you come back, you say, wow, we really do a lot of good stuff here. In this time, in politics, there's a lot of, division and that kind of stuff. But when you go out in another country and you come back, we're all Americans. And you see, how good we do have it. So now when guys go to these other countries and they're trying to play, they're trying to find places to go eat, and they're eating food that they don't even recognize. And they're trying to order food in a different language. As Americans, we expect foreign people to come to our country and be able to speak English. But when we go to their countries, we try to speak English again. So yeah, I talk about that in my book. That's one of the chapters. I think it's called Speaking in Tongues. So it's talking about the different languages and stuff like that. And, when I kind of put this joke in that I heard about once before. It says, what do you call a person that can speak two languages? And the answer is bilingual. They say, okay, what's a person that can speak three languages? Trilingual.
Yeah.
What do you call a person that can only speak one language? And the answer is an American. So, and that's really true. Because we have that expectation when we're there, they should understand us. But when they're here, we expect them. So I always remember that. And I always didn't want to be known as that guy who's the arrogant American. So one of the biggest things that I always like to do was when I went to these different countries is I wanted to learn their languages. So, I grew up in Southern California outside the Los Angeles area, and I kind of picked up on some Spanish. I lived in a neighborhood that was around a lot of Hispanic people. Mm-hmm. And in high school and stuff like that, I took Spanish. And, I had a number of times as a teenager and in college times, and even after that a little bit, we crossed the border down into Tijuana, and, I used my Spanish a little bit. But when you have to really seriously use it for daily life, necessity, then it really started to come out. So I played in the Mexican League for a year and a half. I played a winter season in Puerto Rico. I played another winter season in the Dominican Republic. So that's when I really had to really use Spanish and, get a grip on it. And I was starting to get pretty decent, with my Spanish. And plus, all the years in the minor leagues and major leagues, we always had a lot of Latin players. Right. So I always like to practice my Spanish with them. So that really helped me a lot. Then, right when I was really getting comfortable with that in the Mexican League, I went to Taiwan. Now we're in a whole nother part of the world, and they speak Chinese. So that was something to have to really accomplish. I remember like my first days in Taiwan, and one of the guys, American players on the team, was a guy, because I was drafted by the Houston Astros, and in the minor leagues, when I briefly was in the minor leagues of the Astros, this guy, his name was Tony Matoyer. He was in Taiwan on my team. Mm-hmm. So I showed up, and at least I had him as a guy that would kind of show me the ropes a little bit, made it a little bit easier, how to find, where to go eat at, how to order it, speak Chinese, do all the basic necessities. Mm-hmm. And the hard part about Chinese is they speak in 4 different tones. So the word ma, you say it in 4 different tones: ma, 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 ma. That means 4 different things right there. So that was going to be real difficult. And I was so impressed when I got with those teammates of mine, and we get in a taxi cab, and they tell the cab driver how to get to places. And I remember like that first few days, I go, I ain't going to be able to handle this, man. And they go, no, you'll catch on. Well, I was in Taiwan for 5 seasons. So I did start to catch on. I never became fluent, but I was able to speak enough to survive, to talk to cab drivers, to order food, basic questions and things, how to talk to the people on the streets and stuff like that. So, and I'd learned that people said to me, and it made me really focus on it, was if you're in another country and you're trying to speak their language to them, they'll be much more receptive to you and helping you.
Right.
If you're that arrogant guy and you show up and you're yelling at them in English, come on, what's wrong with you? You don't understand me. And, you won't get no help.
Right.
So I always had kept that in mind and, speaking the language, which then would help me a lot. Then my last year that I did play internationally was in Italy. So now I got to go speaking in Italian. Now, what made that a little easier is Italian and Spanish are very similar. A lot of words are very, very close to being the same sound and the same word. So that was kind of helping me out there a bit when I got to Italy. But then now the funny thing that happened to me in both occasions was when I went from speaking Spanish to Chinese, when I went to Taiwan, when you get to the point where you can hear someone speak to you and you got to hear it and then you got to respond, you can't sit there and take 5+ seconds to answer a question. So you want to hear it and respond. So the person in Chinese asked me a question and I responded back in Spanish. That's what's popped out of my head. The words in Spanish popped out, not Chinese. And then I kind of looked at me like, what the heck did I just say back to them? And then the same exact thing happened to me when I was in Italy. They asked me something in Italian and I knew the answer, but the words popped out again in Chinese. So all of a sudden you're an Italian guy in Italy and here's Don August and they ask you a question and then the guy's speaking Chinese to you. So it kind of made for some kind of funny situations, which I kind of mentioned in the book too. A lot of other, the culture things, just we had a player in Mexico when I first got down there. I just showed up. We had about maybe a little over a week before the season was going to start, opening day in the Mexican League. Now they start their season earlier than we do here in the States. Major League Baseball and minor leagues, they all start right about that April 1st or that first week of April time.
Right.
In Mexico, they start probably about the middle of March, 2.5, maybe almost 3 weeks before they do here. So I got there beginning of March. We had about maybe 8 days before opening day. So luckily there's a couple of American guys that were there. Well, one of them was absent. And if I want to clarify that a little bit more, he was actually AWOL. So when I did arrive that first day, this Mexican player, he was a Mexican-American player, actually. And he came up to me, and in English, of course, he goes, "Hey, you're the new guy, right?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "My name is Roy. I'm from Texas. Welcome to the team," and stuff like that. And we were just getting ready to I was getting ready to get on the bus to go to my first workout practice. And as we get on the bus, he goes, "Yeah, there's another American here. His name's Chris." And as we're walking on the bus, he points to him. I knew who Chris was. He's the only gringo there. So, yeah, there's Chris. And so I go sit by him, and we start to talk. And I go, "It's okay if I sit here?" He goes, "Yeah. That was Phil's space." I go, "Well, where's Phil?" "Well, Phil's not here right now." I go, "What happened?" He goes, "Well, Phil had a little culture shock. He freaked out and panicked. And in the middle of the night, he packed all his bags up and stuff, hitchhiked out of town, and got to now this was in the city of Puebla, which is like about 2 hours away from Mexico City. So somehow he hitchhiked out of town and got himself to the airport in Mexico City and went back home to the United States. I go, "Well, is he planning on coming back?" I doubt it. I go, "What does the team think about this?" They go, "Well, they've been trying to contact him." So, okay. About a few days later, we hear that Phil's going to come back. So Phil does show up a few days later. So now I got him and Chris, the other gringo, and then Roy, the Mexican-American guy. So at least I got some guys I can speak English with. They've been there a little bit. They kind of know the town. So it's always good that you start following their lead. And then when Phil arrived, I said, I got to know him a little bit. I said, Phil, what happened here, man? I go, you left. What'd you tell the team? He goes, I told him I had a family emergency. He goes, but I wasn't coming back. Because I just had to get out. I go, what happened? He goes, dude, I just freaked out. Because this whole place kind of felt like I was getting boxed in and stuff. And, he was kind of like a high-strung guy a little bit in his own way. But, when you're trying to deal with all these different things that you got to deal with and to survive daily and then get to the ballpark and have to do good, he kind of was freaked out about that. So he was back, and then he just had trouble adapting. And then there's us three guys that we said, hey, when things, we all started out doing pretty good. All three of us were pitchers, starting pitchers. We all were doing pretty good. And he won his first couple games, maybe 2 or 3. So we're all happy. Hardships and things would come up. We just laugh it off. Yep, you just got to laugh. And we call it the healing power of laughter. But then Phil lost a game. Okay. He wasn't happy about it. Then he lost another game. And then he was getting a little edgy. All of a sudden, he was like starting to complain about stuff. He wasn't using the healing power of laughter thing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the book, it talks about this a little bit too. We're all sharing a hotel room in our hometown. All three of us put together some money in there, and we were able to get a halfway decent hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
And one morning, like, I don't know, it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. All of a sudden, it was like suddenly there was just like jackhammers just blasting and banging, and the room is shaking right outside our window. They were doing some kind of renovating or building or whatever, and it just woke us all up. But that was Phil's day that he was going to pitch his next game. He's already had a few bad ones. He's starting to get in a bad mood, and he just freaked out. And he jumped up. He screams out the window at him. They probably couldn't even hear him anyways, and he's screaming in English, so they probably didn't know if they could even hear him.
Right.
And then he's like, this is my day to pitch. I need my sleep, and he's just freaking out. Then he runs out the door, and he runs to the front desk, and he screams at them about all this stuff, and again in English and all that. And he came back finally, and he went back to bed, and he still was cussing and screaming and yelling. Well, needless to say, that game that night didn't go too well for Phil, and he had another really bad game, and the team released him right after that. So he got a few games, and that's all they give you. But Phil was just kind of, he just couldn't handle it. So me and Chris, now we're the two guys that for the time being, we're like, man, he was like, we were buddies, man. We were like walking around the town of Puebla, learning our way, finding where there's essential places to get food and things to do and all that. So it's kind of sad that our guy was no longer with us.
Right.
And I would continue to see that throughout my years playing international baseball. Guys would just come, really good players. Some guys had Major League Baseball experience even, and they just couldn't handle it, and we'd be gone. And then guys would come and go that way over the years that I was playing, all these different places.
Well, so then that leads me to that, since you're saying that's a good point that you made in your book on that. What do you think made guys like that? Is it just because they just don't want to get too used to the culture? Or are they afraid of the culture? What makes you think guys don't act? What makes you think guys act like the way that Phil did?
Well, it's just they're accustomed to our lifestyle as being Americans. It's like we expect things to work easily, and we expect that when we do have a problem that we can resolve them easily and quickly. Doesn't happen there. It takes a long time. All these different places where I did play, I had problems daily, and I had to go resolve them in my little Spanish or Chinese or even Italian, trying to resolve, or broken English. If they spoke a little English, it was like, you're speaking in, broken, and
right.
You're trying to, you kind of get what they're saying and stuff like that. And you got to resolve the problem every day. And still, again, what you're there for, it's your job. And you got to go out in that field and perform.
Right.
I always looked at it that I was going to these different countries for a couple of reasons. One, I felt as long as that you were playing baseball and like I said, you had a uniform on your back, you had an opportunity. A scout will find you somewhere, anywhere around the world. There's scouts around the world.
Without doubt.
So, and the one reason why I did go to Taiwan was in 1994. I started the season in the Mexican League, and I played for the team that I played for the year before. And halfway through, here's another thing Americans got to deal with, is halfway through the season, they played 2 half seasons in Mexico. And they use these points. If you come in first place, you get 8 points. And if you're in last place in that division, you get 1 point. Then they add them up. And then the top teams with the points make the playoffs. But if you come in last place and only get 1 point, even if you come in first place the next half, there's a good chance you still don't make the playoffs. You don't have enough points.
Right.
So if they're not going to make the playoffs and you're halfway through the season, then the general managers and owners, they release all the higher paid players, such as the American guys like me. So halfway through that second year in the Mexican League, we were in last place, losing. They had no chance, so they let me go. So I was always still with my agent trying to find a team to get back to at least to AAA or something. The year before in 1993 in the Mexican League, about halfway through the year, my agent got me a AAA deal with the Cleveland Indians. So I was able to leave. But then I came back the following season in 94. But this time, halfway through this season, we were in last place. They released me. So I come home. It was nice to speak English again and use American money and eat food that I was accustomed to and all that good stuff. Be with my wife and my very young son.
Right.
And then I was hoping that my agent would find me a minor league team at least. My phone did ring, but it was another team in the Mexican League that asked me to come join their team for the second half.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I called my agent real quick one more time. You got anything happening? He's nah. I go, all right, well, head down to the Mexican League again. And I finished out the season there. So this is 1994. The Mexican season, they start earlier and they end a little earlier. I think they end, if I remember right, probably the end of July, kind of. The minor league season at that time would end in the 1st of September. And, of course, the major leaguers go to the 1st of October.
Right.
So it was like end of July or close to the 1st of August. The season ended. And I called my agent, and he said he got me a deal that I go with the AA team with the Cleveland Indians. I said, okay, great. But when I got home, I spoke to the scout that drafted me out of college. He was the assistant general manager of the San Diego Padres at that time. I forget if he contacted me or I contacted him somehow, but he said, hey, I'll take you to AA with the Padres, which was in Wichita, and we'll have you pitch. There's about 2.5 to 3 weeks, and then if there's playoffs, we'll have you pitch about a couple of starts or so, or get you in some games in the Wichita, and then we'll move you to the AAA Las Vegas team. And I think they're going to make the playoffs or not, pitch a few games there, and we'll see what happens. And then at the very least, you'll come back. You have a job. We'll have you a AAA contract to come back next year with the Padres. And I go, man, this is all sounding great. And plus the word was out that the general manager of the Padres was going to be let go. And Reggie Waller, the guy who's the assistant, was supposed to take over. So here's the guy that's going to probably become the general manager. So I got a guy that's got my back. And he says, well, then the next spring training you'll come in. Because I don't know if I can guarantee you that I could get you to major league spring training, but I'll probably bring you up for some B games. Those are side major league games on the side, or bring you up once in a while if they need an extra arm in a major league exhibition game. And then at very least you'll start in AAA and we'll take it from there. Wow, that's a great story. I think I can handle that. Well, so I go to Wichita, and I meet the manager there, and he says, well, we're going to have you pitch in relief while you're here. I go, that's great. I'm only supposed to be here for, maybe a week or week and a half or so, whatever. I go, I haven't pitched in about a week since I left Mexico and came home and got this deal done and got there. So I go, this relief thing would be good. It'll kind of tune me up and get me ready. So when I go to Las Vegas, I'll jump in and I'll be ready to go, because I pitched really good in Mexico. I pitched real good. My stuff was really sharp and good. I threw a ton of shutouts and all this kind of stuff in complete games. So I was feeling pretty good about things.
Mm-hmm.
So Reggie got me in a hotel that the Padres pay for. Usually they put you up for a few days and then you got to take it over. But we had about 2.5 weeks left in the season, or 2 weeks, whatever it was. And he paid for the hotel the whole time. And then at this hotel in the parking lot, there was a Denny's. So of course I go there to get lunch or something like that. And it's like, I've been there for like 2 days, and I walk into the Denny's. I was going to eat lunch by myself. You see newspapers laying around. So I grab the sports page, of course. And the waitress takes me to my seat. I sit down. I start reading through the sports page in Wichita. And then about midway through the sports page, page 5, 6, or whatever the heck it was, headline there: San Diego Padres fire assistant general manager Reggie Waller yesterday, whatever it said. I said, what did I just read? I go, no way. So after I ate, not so comfortably, I went back to my hotel room and I called him up. I said, Reggie, I'm reading a newspaper here in Wichita saying that you just got fired. He goes, yeah, it's true.
Oh boy.
I said, oh. I go, really? I go, we had plans. We had this big plan. He said, I know. I go, what happened? And he just said, Don, I was there. There's things that were going on that I didn't like, and I just couldn't keep my mouth shut. And because that's what got me.
Damn.
So there was my link to get back to AAA. I didn't have to worry about going to the winter ball or nothing like that. I had a team. I didn't have to worry about all winter long trying to beg for jobs, get my agent to try to get someone to talk to. I thought I was okay. I had a place to go. So now Reggie Waller comes back in the story again. So Reggie Waller kind of comes in and out of my stories here. He was the scout that drafted me out of college. He's the guy that, I talked to here about going to Wichita. And then Reggie would come back a year later, because I did get lucky again. But now, while I was in Wichita, that's when the Major League Baseball players strike occurred. It was in August of 1994.
Right.
The season ended. They tried to negotiate, didn't come out. So everyone knows there was no World Series in 1994. So no World Series. The rest of the season didn't happen.
Oh, hold on. And then you can continue on. I don't know if you can see this, but my number one fan, Baseball or Us, can you see this? If you remember this game, I guess you were the first winning pitcher at the Sky Dome.
Yep.
And do you remember who you beat?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember a lot about that day. I pitched against Jimmy Key. He was with the Toronto Blue Jays.
Tell my number one fan about that story about that game and how you managed to come out of that day as the winner.
Well, that was in 1989. So the year before that, 1988, that was my rookie season. We played in their old exhibition stadium, which is kind of like where the Canadian Football League, Toronto Argonauts, I think they're called, played their football games in the stadium.
Yes, the Argonauts.
So
yep.
So when the Toronto Blue Jays played there, it was like they put a temporary fence around from like center field around to right field, and then left field was the bleachers of the football stadium, basically. So that's where they used to play. So they, of course, now are going to build a new stadium called Sky Dome, and it was supposed to be ready for opening day in April of 1989, but it wasn't. So what took place was they decided they'd be able to get the stadium ready. It was like the first week of June, which so happened that's when the Milwaukee Brewers were going to be playing the Toronto Blue Jays. And it just so happened that was my day to pitch. It fell on my day.
Right.
So that was the the big new stadium that had all the bells and whistles. They had everything. They had the retractable roof, which they do have here in Milwaukee, which saves a lot of games.
Right. Yep.
They had the Hard Rock Cafe in there. They had a hotel that was up there, way out in right field and way high up in the sky. If you had a hotel room there, you'd open up your curtains and look down and watch the game down below. And they had all these little games and stuff all inside the stadium, which hardly any stadiums had at that time. But now I'm sure they pretty much all do.
Right.
But that kind of was based off of them. So we're in that brand new stadium, and it was like a buzz. It was the fans were really excited about it. We got in there. It's like, man, there's like the locker room was super big. They had this humongous like weight room and all the stuff, man, that all the modern stadiums have. We're still playing. There's still Fenway Park. Those were the old little ballparks.
Right.
The locker rooms are just super small and cramped and have nothing really in them. And this is the big suite now, stadium that everything. So there was a big buzz about it. A lot of people were excited about it. You feel the energy and the fans' excitement. And so I'm the starting pitcher. I warm up and I go out and I'd see the first hit wasn't by me because we batted first, so we were the visitors. Paul Molitor got the first base hit in Skydome. And then I pitched, I did give up the very first home run in Skydome too.
Ooh.
I gave that up to Fred McGriff, which, a lot of people gave up home runs to him.
Right. Legend.
It's a big, the crime dog. I gave a home run to him years later, several years after that. I bet you it's probably 6, 7, 8 years ago. I was doing a celebrity, golf event, raising money for diabetes. And Fred McGriff was there and I was there. And I saw him up ahead of me walking, toward the golf course. And I said, "Hey, Fred." He didn't know who was behind him. I said, "Hey, Fred, who's the guy that got the first major league home run in Skydome?" And he starts laughing. And then, he has his back to me as he's walking, I go, "Fred, I'm the guy that gave that up to you." He stops in his tracks and turns around. He goes, "Yeah." I didn't know if he remembered me exactly. But he goes, "Hey, Augie. Oh, is that you?" And he comes in and gives me a hug and stuff like that. We're talking about, that was 89. I'm talking about 2009. That's 20. I bet you 25 years at least from that point
that's crazy, isn't it?
This happened. So
that's crazy. He still remembers you, right?
Yeah. I remember me, Augie. Yeah. So then I went into the 6th inning. After I gave up that home run, I think we had like a 5-3 lead, something like that. Jimmy Key's pitching against me for the Blue Jays. He's a really good pitcher. He had a great career. He was a real, crafty left-handed pitcher that had a lot of good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I get taken out in the 6th inning. I went 5 1/3, 5 2/3, something like that. And the relief pitchers held him down. Dan Plesac comes in, saves the game. And so I end up getting the first win. So I can brag about that. But to be humble, I talk about how I did give up the first home run. If I got to be balanced here.
You should have been able to get the ball, man.
Yeah.
For the first win there.
I didn't get the ball. No, I didn't. Well, actually, one of the players got a game ball, and he rode on it. It was Dave Engel. He was like a backup catcher we had that year. And he wrote down first win at Skydome. He wrote it down, and he gave it to me. So I do have that ball, actually.
Do you still have it?
Yeah, it was one of the balls. I think it was a foul ball that got thrown out or something. So he wrote on it and gave it to me. So, yeah, I do have a ball.
There you go. Hey, always cherish that. Remember the first time there. First time stadium open. Hey, you got to always remember that. And I'm sure McGriff will always remember that too, because that's the first home run ever in that building. So he'll never.
That was like one of the first parks that had been built in a while, So the first thing, there's not that many stadiums left that I played in as a major leaguer.
Right. There isn't.
There's a lot of new first guys who was the first game winner in probably Texas Stadium, or the first game who won the game in, a lot of the others are, the San Francisco or whatever, But yeah, people do remember that a little bit more so for whatever reason. A lot of people bring that to me kind of often enough.
And for my number one fan, Baseball R Us, please tell us and him where we can get and find your book at. And if you can, Baseball R Us, share this link, the YouTube link that you're on right now, to your friends, to whoever you want to, so they can get this book if they're a baseball fan as well, because this will be a good book to listen. This guy has good stories, and I'm glad he got a hold of me to get back on here for this. So please tell my number one fan, where we can get this book.
All right. Well, the title of the book is Pitching to the Corners, My Post MLB Career Abroad. I think the easiest way to get the book is just go on Amazon. Go on Amazon, type in my name, or type in the title of the book. It'll pop up and you can order it and they'll deliver it right to your front door. I'm sure there's other places where you can get it. You know, you can possibly order it through the publisher. It's being published by McFarland and Company. Maybe you go on their website, order it too, but Amazon would deliver it to you. I don't know if how they go about getting them to certain bookstores. I'm not too sure about how that works, but I think Amazon would be the easiest way.
And you got yourself a purchaser. He will be purchasing. Thank you, Baseball R Us. And like I said, share this link to all your baseball buddies. If they're interested, have them purchase. Tune in. Is a good listen. And hey, if they don't want to buy, just listen to his stories. Send this link, and he'll tell us stories because we got tons more. But yeah, let's continue on with what you were saying before Baseball R Us commented on your first win. The story that you were about the Padres, because I'm real interested in that, because the Padres. I told you the Padres are my number one team.
Oh, okay.
I told you that the last time we spoke.
I think it all comes back to me now. Yeah. So I was a Padre for a few weeks, but yeah. So I go to Wichita and then I find out Reggie gets fired. So I pitch in relief in 4 games. Then the season comes to an end, and there is no going to Las Vegas. And the pitching coach told me, goes, well, I've talked to the minor league director. We'll let you know now so you can start finding a job again. But we're not going to be bringing you to spring training next year. That was part of my plan with Reggie.
Right.
Oh, God. Now I had a job. Now I don't have a job. Now I got to go try to, find a team and all that. But baseball goes on. There's no World Series. And that negotiating or arguing goes throughout the whole off season. And then towards the end of that off season or so, the owners, remember when the owners got that idea about using replacement players? So when spring training of 1995 was going to roll around, the strike was still going on, and there was not going to be no legitimate major league spring training. When they decided they're going to use replacement players, all the owners were going to call all these past major league players, former minor leaguers, or anybody that they can get and sign them as replacement players,
right,
and bring them to spring training.
Right.
And if there's no deal done, and when those exhibition games would start, then they would use these replacement players. And if the major league season doesn't start, they're going to start the season with replacement players and not legitimate major leaguers.
Right.
So, for a couple of years, I was like trying to contact many teams, get a job. Wasn't getting the answers. No one was responding back to my calls or nothing. My agent was working it. And when they went through the replacement, now I didn't have my agent. My last agent, he just said he couldn't do much and help me much more. So I was on my own now without an agent. So I'm the one making calls and trying to do things. Then when the replacement thing was going to be used, my phone rang off the hook. All of a sudden, all the baseball teams knew my phone number again. And they're saying, hey, we'd like to sign you as a replacement player. Will you want to do it? And I said, no way. I was a union guy with the baseball union. They took care of me and all this kind of stuff. I was not going to cross the lines and do that. And what they were doing was they were giving every player who would agree to do this, as soon as you agreed, even if they settled the next day, they were going to give you $25,000 just to do it and sign.
Mm-hmm.
And then while you're in spring training, the major league spring training, you would get major league meal money, and then you'd play the games. And if you started the season, you'd make the major league minimum salary. So that was the lure that they gave all these guys. So a lot of guys would do it. The major league players in the union said, don't cross. So all of us former guys, we said, no, some guys crossed, but almost all of us, we didn't. So I was, though, when all these teams were calling, almost all of them had called. And I go, oh, God, that's all they want me for. But then a phone call came from the Atlanta Braves. And the minor league director say, Don, we want to sign you, but not as a replacement player. I go, oh, good. I go, I ain't going to come there as a replacement. I told all these other teams, no way, I ain't going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, no, we want you to come here and be a veteran guy on the AAA team, kind of mentor and help the younger AAA pitchers. And if you're pitching good, we can bring you up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the hard thing about that story is the Atlanta Braves starting rotation had 3 Hall of Fame pitchers.
Yeah, that's
Greg
the trouble.
Maddux.
Yep.
John
Maddux, Levin, and
Smoltz.
Smoltz. Yep.
Yeah, so they had them guys there. Okay, but their AAA park was in Richmond, Virginia, which is a very good pitcher's park. That heavy, humid air, you break a ball, broke real hard. The ball didn't travel as far,
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Glavine, I've got Tom Glavine's name. Then the guy called me and said, he offered me the money and all that kind of stuff. And he says, hey, if there's a major league spring training, a real major league spring training, we'll bring you to that. I said, okay, great. So I go, let me talk it over with my wife. He said, okay. So I talked over with my wife and we're like, okay, this sounds like a good idea. So as I was literally walking to the phone to go call him back, the phone rang. And I answered, and it's Pete Vukovich. Pete Vukovich was a former major league pitcher for the Brewers. While I was in the major leagues, he was like the TV color man on our baseball games. So I got to know Pete pretty well. Mm-hmm. He's now an assistant to the general manager. And he says, hey, Don, we're here to sign you. I go, well, I already got a deal. And I go, I'm not going to be a replacement player. No, we don't want you to be a replacement player. I go, oh, okay, 2 teams now. I go, but Pete, I was literally walking to the telephone to call the Atlanta Braves and accept their deal. And he goes, well, what was their deal? So I told him. He goes, we'll match it. Okay. For the money and all this, I go, they said they invite me to Major League Spring Training. He goes, okay, we'll do that too.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right. So I got everything the same as with the Atlanta Braves. And I said, okay, Pete, can I call you back? Let me just think this out and I'll call you right back. He said, sure. So I talked to my wife about it. I go, well, we got the AAA team with the Braves, which is in Richmond, good minor league pitchers park, but we got those Hall of Fame guys there. Mm-hmm. Or you can be at the Pittsburgh Pirates, who was a team that was kind of struggling at the time. Their pitching staff wasn't that good, but their AAA team was in Calgary, Canada, which is a hitter's park. The ball flies. It's like light air up there.
Which pitchers don't like. Yeah, pitchers don't like that. Yep.
No. So I'm like, what do? I said, well, I got Pete Vukovich in my corner, though. I got him. So I said, okay. I called back Pete. I said, okay, I'll take your deal. And I called the guy from Atlanta, said, sorry, I got a deal with the Pirates. I'm going to go with them. Thanks for considering all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I go to spring training, hoping now before I get there that the strike would get resolved. And I go right to Major League Spring Training and have an opportunity to maybe make the team, but at the very least, be seen, go to AAA, do good, and make it back. That was my plan. Mm-hmm. So we get there, spring training starts, so they can have minor league spring training, but minor league spring training doesn't start until a little bit later. But I had a split contract, or not split contract, but I had a major league invite because if there's a major league spring training, I was going to be there. Me and a bunch of other guys who were a lot of veteran guys like myself, minor league guys who had major league time too. So we get there in Bradenton, Florida. And we don't know who are the replacement players, and we don't know who are the major league invite guys.
Right.
So we didn't know. And there's a lot of tension going on now. Baseball players take this, union and strikes things really serious. Yeah. The major league players were threatening these guys who are going to cross, and your careers will be over if you're going to try to continue and all this kind of stuff.
And if I remember correctly, didn't you say you were a part of that? Because I think we talked about that in our last interview, because I asked you about the strike, and I believe I read something that you were part of it. Did you have any talks in that, the whole strike thing?
I had nothing to do with the strike. I mean, I was in AA with the Padres when the strike took place. They kind of changed the course of the game when there was no major league season. Then I signed with the Pirates. And I wasn't a replacement player. I don't know if you heard or something, but one guy mistakenly, a news guy here, a media guy in Milwaukee, said Don August signs with the Pittsburgh Pirates as a replacement player. That was the last thing I wanted to be put out there. That was wrong. I wasn't.
Right.
But now the whole world heard it, and they're going to be mad at me. So that happened. I guess maybe that was the point that happened. And I think the next point, maybe what you're kind of getting at, was when we arrived to spring training, now they finally separated us. The replacement guys went to the major league complex. Us invites, minor league, like I said, minor league training hasn't started, but we trained at the minor league complex.
Right.
Then the general manager called the meeting with me and all these other guys who were former major leaguers and that sort of thing, major league invites. He says, typically, like any spring training, during an exhibition games, we do go down and pull guys up out of the minor league camp to come and pitch if we need help. That does happen. He goes, so I don't see how that could be any different for you guys. So, we're a bunch of guys that have more experience than the replacement guys had,
Yeah.
And he goes, so I expect that if we ever need you, that you guys will come and do it. I go, wait a minute. I'm thinking to myself, what? We'd be crossing the line and playing in a replacement game. And the union and those major players, they'll blackball me forever. So the general manager, he at the meeting, he says, okay, I told you guys that. Now, I expect you guys to do it if we call you. If you have a effing problem with that, I need to see you in my office in the next couple of days. If I don't hear from you, then we expect you to be there. And that's how the meeting ended. So me and about 6, 7, 8 other guys walk out there going, oh, crap. All of a sudden now we're being pulled into this. And so I get back to my hotel room and I call Pete Vukovich up. I say, Pete, the general manager's had a meeting that says if they want to pull us in these exhibition games as replacement players, we if we don't do it, we could get released. He goes, oh, I guess you can do that. I said, wait a minute. And I go, that wasn't our deal. He goes, well, I don't know. He didn't know what to say or do. So now I got to worry about it. If they call me, if I don't do it, I'm going to be let go. Now, another thing that occurred, so about a day or two later, I go to the general manager's office and I say, hey, knock, knock, knock. He sees me. He kind of smiles. He thinks I'm going to come and tell him I'm going to do it. I said, I can't do it. I go, if you call me, I won't do it. I hope you don't, but don't call me to be a replacement player. Then all of a sudden his face got very serious and looked like he's upset with me. He goes, okay, you know the consequences. So that's how I ended it.
Right.
And then during that time, the Major League Union and some Major League players were going all around the spring training places around Florida. One of them was in Tampa. And everybody was just dying to hear what information there was about the strike, because the strike has gone on. They started playing these replacement games. Fortunately, I had never been asked to do it at that point. So me and another guy who I was rooming with, we drive up to Tampa from Bradenton, and we find where this meeting's going to be at. And there is probably about 400 guys in there, all in the minor league camps and stuff. Minor league camp has now started too. And everyone just wanted to hear the news. So one of the union guys were up there saying, hey, don't cross, don't do it. You'll be blackballed and all that. And they had a few major league players get up there and say, hey, if we stick together, we'll be okay. We'll work out. And then they went on and on doing that, all that stuff. And then they said there'd be questions. So questions out of the crowd. So a bunch of guys who are my same boat said, hey, we're being threatened that we might get released if they ask us to do it and we don't. They said, well, don't do it. And then we go, well, how can you protect us? And they go, we can't. I go, well, what do you mean? Well, you're not under a major league contract, so we can't represent you. So we can't say nothing. So we're going, well, if they ask us to play and we don't, we get released. If we do play, we cross, then you're mad at us, but you can't help us. So we were put in a big old bad spot there. So a lot of guys were kind of upset about that. They kind of updated us about where things were at, but it didn't look like if things were going to be agreed to at that point soon. So now I'm going through the rest of spring training and trying to deal with this thing. And luckily for me, like I said, I was never asked. We're getting out toward the end of spring training. And actually, a thing that I wanted to do. It's in the book. I talked about this in the book. I'm in AAA, playing on the AAA minor league team, and we're going to go to Sarasota, and we're going to play the White Sox. And remember, Michael Jordan was a baseball player at that time. He was going to spring training, getting ready for his second season in the minor leagues. So the day that I'm going to go pitch against the White Sox, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to be able to pitch against Michael Jordan. So as we pull into the parking lot of their stadium there's all of these news trucks all over the place. I'm like, wait, what the heck's going on? Did the strike get settled finally? Nope. It was Michael Jordan announcing that he's going back to the NBA. So I didn't get a chance to pitch to him, which I would like to have said I did, at least in a spring training game. And then about maybe not even a week later or so. What's that?
By the way, Don, I don't know if you see, but thank you, Baseball Us, and I'm sure Don thanks you as well. I don't know if you see it, but my number one fan purchased your book.
All right, there we go.
He says he just turned 60 today.
All right.
And is a birthday present to himself.
Wow, I appreciate that.
So there you go.
Thank you very much.
See? He loves your stories. Keep it up.
Right. That's what I do. I just tell a bunch of stories of people like this.
Oh, he hears you. This is all, like I said, he's watching right now.
Yeah, so
he's watching right now, so he's grateful and so he's going to enjoy every minute of it.
Happy birthday to you, and hope you enjoy reading it. See what it was like playing baseball in all these different parts of the world.
And like I said, and keep asking him questions if you have any questions, if you want to know more stories before you read the book.
If he wants to ask me or anybody's listening
right now,
if you have more stories, just throw them in. That's what I did, and that's what inspired me really to write the book in the first place.
Exactly.
I don't see the questions
and you shared the link on YouTube. I know you did, Baseball. No, I know I just told him, so hopefully he does, and he sees this. He's watching right now. So if you have any questions, Don's watching, so he'll keep an eye out. So I just keep ask away if you have any, and please, I know you've shared the link as well, Baseball Us. So get as many people you want to watch. Before you add on back to that story, I know you were close with another one of the guests I had on, Mark Knudsen. Are you still close with him? And how much of an influence was he as well in you writing this book? Because you said you guys were pretty close.
Yeah. We were both traded the same trade. We were both drafted by the Houston Astros. And then when I got to AAA with the Astros, we were roommates on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to know him pretty good. And during that season, I stayed in AAA with the Astros that year. He was up and down with the major league team. And then the Astros made a trade. It was in 1986. The Astros ended up winning the Western Division that year in the National League. And in August, they made one of those trades for me and Mark Knudsen to the Brewers. And the Brewers gave him Danny Darwin, who was a veteran pitcher at that time, for that stretch drive in August into September to help them make the playoffs. So that's how I got to the Brewers, along with Mark Knudsen. So then we get to the Brewers organization. We both went to AAA, and we were roommates there. And then for the next couple of years, he was up and down. And then I made it, and finally in 1988. And then my first roommate on the road was him again. So, we were really good friends, did a lot of stuff together. And so that was our connection. We were together in the same trade and played together in two different organizations. And he was an older guy, actually my first day in the major leagues.
That's awesome.
He was there in Milwaukee. And I get there, I'm all happy, and I'm getting into the clubhouse. You see your uniform hanging up in the locker, and you get all pumped up about that. And so he comes up to me, and he's going to show me around the stadium, so I know where to go. I didn't know where door led to the tunnel to the baseball field or stuff like that. So I remember as we're walking down the tunnel to go out to the dugout onto the field, and I said, please, just don't let me do anything stupid, all right? You don't want to be that rookie guy making that stupid, dumb mistake or something like that. So he was that guy. I remember we walked up the dugout steps on the field. I remember just looking in the stands. I've been to Major League Baseball feels before, growing up as a kid watching Angels and Dodger games and things, stuff like that. But I go, this is for real, man. I go, this is when you really hit you that you're a Major League Baseball player. You made it, and this is where they play real Major League Baseball games. So we were together for a lot of those types of things.
That's awesome. I never would have thought that I'd actually have somebody on that knew somebody that I actually had on again. That was the first time, because he was telling me, and like I never knew, and then you told me. It was like, wow, I can't believe that. I never knew that. It was like crazy to believe that I actually had two guests that were well friends. So now, personally, honestly, I gotta get you two on together again. So you're going to be on for a third time, and he's going to be on for a fourth time. I gotta get you two on
three of us
together.
on at the same time. We can kind of talk about more things for sure.
That's what I'm saying. But Eugene, who is baseball artist, thank you for telling me your name finally. I don't know if you see this. You obviously played with Robin Yount. That was his favorite player. He wants you to tell us any stories you have about him and you being a teammate of his.
Well, Robin Yount was a little older than me, so I came up. I definitely knew who he was, when I got traded over to the Brewers. And so I was a couple of Major League spring trainings with him there, and I just got to watch him prepare for a season, just to see his greatness. And so also, we also were teammates with Paul Molitor, and those guys were just like, they're Hall of Famers. So obviously they're doing a lot of great things. And I just remember sitting in the dugout. I made myself really absorb this. I'm watching these two guys. I said, you got to just, in my own mind, I'm saying, you just got to really watch and enjoy what these guys do day after day and game after game, So I was able to take that in and see them. And I really just remember a lot of great things that they did as players, just how they led by example. They weren't really guys that would bark out and yell at a lot, like stuff like that. But when they did speak, when Robin would speak, people would listen. It was more by example. He played the game the right way. He played hard. He never played. He hated talking about himself. He always wanted to talk about the team, and he always talked about trying to win games and talk about getting back into a World Series. That's all he wanted to do. And he would just lead by example. And like I said, once in a while, if something needed to be said or he raised his voice, people would stop and would listen. And it was just awesome to watch him play every day.
That's awesome. Yeah, he to be next to two Hall of Famers. Plus you knew, like you said before, you also knew, even though you weren't with them, you were still fighting against them. 3 future Hall of Famers and Glavine Smoltz. Tell of Hall of Famers you've been around. You got that. You got to think to yourself, wow. You got to think to yourself that.
Yeah, well, yeah. When I first came with the Astros, Nolan Ryan was in our locker room.
Right.
I'm 21 years old, going to my first Major League spring training, and I'm hanging out with Nolan Ryan. There's a lot of Major League players that I would pitch against in my time with the Milwaukee Brewers. So, guys like Ricky Henderson, Wade Boggs.
Yep. As we said, Crime Dog,
Crime Dog, Cal Ripken Jr.
Yep.
I can just name the list. There's a number of names that I could look up that I pitched against. So, yeah, that's the great thing about being that you made it to Major League Baseball. I didn't make the Hall of Fame, but that was my goal, to try to be around long enough for that. But you had to go up against the guys who did, and you were part of it and part of the Major League history. So that's something that I always can talk about.
Is there so tell us deep more about this book. Like, what is your favorite? Do you have a favorite? I know you got tons of stories, obviously, that's why you wrote the book. But is there one specific story in the book that you all want us to engage in that you thought was your personal favorite out of the book?
I think the biggest story in the book will be, I think it's chapter 8, called Ramblin' Gamblin' Man. And it talks about what happened in the professional baseball in Taiwan with the gangsters and the bookies, and how they infiltrated into get the players to not say throw games, but maybe lose games or not win games by a certain amount of runs. And it got involved, and they were recruiting players. And I tell this story without giving much away, how I got trapped into a room where these gangsters wanted me to throw games, and I had to tell them no to their face that I wouldn't do it. And I had to get down 10 stories without getting killed, I guess. So that's one of the stories there. That's in chapter 8. And I think that's a story like the stories that I've told over the years that they liked the most. So our one viewer here has the book ordered, so he'll check that out. But for others who may be watching and think about buying the book, that story is in there.
Perfect. And I can't wait. And I'm sure he can't wait to read it as well. He also has a question. Bo Jackson took you deep twice. Do you remember that? And what kind of pitches were they that you threw? Do you remember to him?
I think so. I do remember the one home run he hit at me. It was in Kansas City. And I believe it was a fastball away. Might have got up a little bit. But he hit it in the angle that I saw. It looked like it was going more upward. So typically that would be like a fly ball out to the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
But he had such strength, and he swung and made the contact. I looked up, and it just kept going and going and going, and it flew out of the stadium. And I went, wow. I thought that was going to be a fly ball, but, he had such strength and quickness that, man, that ball was way out of the ballpark.
And do you remember the second one?
No, I don't really recall what the second one was. But that's the one I do remember, that one.
Was he as big as what the TV didn't do justice? Was he big in person? Because you got to obviously pitch against him. So
yeah. He was a very well-built, strong athlete. He could do anything. He played in the NFL, played in Major League Baseball.
Right. Yeah.
He was so fast and so strong. That's what made him so great.
You also was this before, or was this after your time that you also played? Were you around, or were you in the minors, or were you in overseas when Dion played as well? Because he was also a two-sport.
He started out. I played against him. I never pitched against him, but he originally came up with the New York Yankees, and then he, right out of college or something like that. Then he went on the NFL and played both baseball and football for a while too. But I never pitched against him. Played against him, but never faced him at the plate.
I'm sure you would have loved to strike him out, though.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, hey, I think I got to wrap it up. I got to get taken off here, things to do. But hey, why don't you set up soon enough with me and Mark Knutson, and all three of us can get back on and we can tell some more stories. And
without
the book too.
Without a doubt, for sure. Definitely. I would definitely, because you two together, I would love that. Because like I said, I never knew you two were friends until he was the one who said it. Not me, he was the one who said it. And I think you ended up seeing it too after I sent you the episodes with the link. Then you said it. Then I was like, oh, wow. Holy crap. But yeah, I will certainly do that. I'm hoping his number's still the same, so I'll keep in touch with him. And Eugene says thanks. He loved it. Thank you, Eugene, for being my number one fan. I appreciate it. Don thanks you for buying his book. He hopes you love it. I hope you love it. I will certainly enjoy it myself. I will read it. Even though I don't read much, but I will read it.
You'll read this, though. You'll like it.
Exactly. I will.
It's a different story, different type of story.
But I appreciate it, and I will certainly work on that. And if you can get a hold of him, let me know. If I can't, I'll text you if I can't get a hold of him.
Sure. You can tell me and I'll get a hold of him. That'd be great. We'll set something up.
Right. And I do appreciate your time. Thank you again. Your stories were awesome, just like before when I had you on, and we'll get you on again. But last time before we go off for tonight, tell everybody again, reiterate where we can get your book, where we can find your book, and promote it.
Well, again, the title of the book is
find you.
Yep. The title of the book is Pitching to the Corners, My Post MLB Career Abroad. It's being published by McFarland and Company. The best way to get the book, as I mentioned earlier, would be through Amazon. Just get on Amazon and you can type in my name or the book title name. They'll pop up. You can order it right there. And like I said before, they'll deliver it right to your door. And you can follow me on Twitter, now called X, on Don August 38. And you can kind of follow me there with some stories. And I often talk about the book, and if there's any more information, they can get probably through that. So
Perfect.
That's the one.
Yep, couldn't have said any better, and I will work on that. And like I said, I'll text you if I can't get a hold of him. It was a pleasure. Thank you again. You have a good night.
All righty. You too. And thank you guys for purchasing the book and following us.
Definitely. And thank you, Eugene, as always, for tuning in. I appreciate it. You all have a good night. Thank you, Don, again. I will get a hold of you, and I'll send you the episode when I'm done. And then I also want to text you something as well after I'm done. So
all righty. I'll check that out. All right.
Awesome.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Thanks a lot.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
That's Don August, everybody. Tremendous guest. I can't wait to have him on again with his friend and my friend Mark Knudsen. And small world. Didn't think they were friends. Who would have thought? But thank you, Eugene, for tuning in. I don't know who I'm going to have on seriously next, but yeah, just keep tuning in like you always do. Please share to YouTube like you've been doing. More views, the better. I appreciate it. And also let me know as well if you got a hold of your friend, so I can let that Ryan Martin know too, so we can have that conversation with him as well on here that we talked about with him. So, but yeah, purchase the book. Thank you, Don, again. I appreciate it. Good stories. It's awesome. Find it on Amazon, like he said. And thank you, Eugene, for purchasing it. I will purchase it. You'll enjoy it. I will certainly enjoy it. But until then, have a good night. Thank you for tuning in. Goodbye.